Hi there! In this video, we're going to create something really cool, our very own GIPHY Clone, a platform for searching, downloading, and saving your favorite GIFs. The project will include Google authentication, dynamic search, a history of your recent downloads, and all of that wrapped in a fun and modern design. Just imagine you visit the site, sign in with Google, type cat meme, get a bunch of hilarious GIFs, hit download, and boom, it's saved to your list. You can also see your previous searches and the GIFs you've downloaded. Pretty convenient, right? This project is a great choice for your portfolio or for learning. And don't worry, even if you're a beginner, we'll go step by step. Because honestly, I don't fully understand how it works yet either. As always, let's break down how the project works under the hood. First, the user interacts with the React client, which serves as the front-end interface. This client talks to our Node server, which handles all the back-end logic. The server connects to several important services: Google API for authentication, GIPHY API for fetching GIFs, and Mongo for storing data. In the database, we keep track of the user's recently downloaded GIFs and their search history. On the web, this kind of architecture is known as a MERN application, which stands for Mongo our database, Express the backend framework running on Node, React the frontend framework, and Node the runtime environment that ties everything together. Alright, let's talk about the UI. First, we have the canvas, which is the main display area. At the top, a header with some basic navigation, maybe a menu, a few buttons, a filter, or a search bar. Then, using a clever layout algorithm, we evenly distribute all the GIFs across the page. The layout is very similar to how images are displayed on Pinterest: clean, responsive, and visually balanced. So that wraps up the basic UI structure and design logic. Let us know, how do you like the design? What would you improve or change to make it even better? Finally, let's get to the code, and more specifically to setting up our API keys. We're working with three main services: Mongo for storing data, OAuth for authentication, and GIPHY for fetching the actual GIFs. Each of these services requires a private API key to work, so we'll store them in a special environment file, usually called .env, to keep them safe and secure. This way, we won't expose sensitive data in our code, and everything stays nice and protected. I'll quickly create all the necessary project files to get us started. Just the basics enough to set up the structure and make sure everything is ready for coding. Alright, let's start writing some actual code. I'm not going to explain every single line or show how I type it out, because you can find all the source code on the project's GitHub page anyway. Instead, I'll focus on the key parts and share the most interesting moments along the way, the things that really matter and are worth your attention. Alright, so now we're writing the app.js file, the main file of the client-side part of our app. Today I want to mix things up a bit, so I'm going to use a class-based component instead of a functional one. With this approach, we need to define a state and also create a couple of functions. Most of these functions will be used for user registration, and of course, we'll also need a render function to return our JSX. We'll display everything using router, and we'll connect the components we've already prepared behind the scenes. Alright, let's write out the functions, and maybe add a bit of chill background music to keep things nice and smooth. Also add a bit of micro-styling, just enough so it doesn't burn our eyes. Nothing too fancy, just a few tweaks to make the UI easier to look at. This is a chill style video, so we're doing a little bit of everything. Right now, we're working on the main server file index. We'll start by importing constants, libraries, and adding some basic security setups. Then we'll define the routes and set up some core logic. At the bottom, we'll connect to the database. And just to make things more fun, I've added a few hidden features, unfinished ideas, and even some Easter eggs in the code. If you take a closer look, you might spot some hooks for features like categories, a full CRUD system, and much more. So if you enjoy exploring and building things up, there's a lot waiting for you inside this project. Now let's talk about one of the cool design features, the GIF grid file. This file is responsible for the layout of the GIFs, kind of like the layout you see on Pinterest. It works together with the Masonry library to dynamically place the GIFs in a visually pleasing, responsive grid. It's one of those small touches that makes the UI feel clean and satisfying, and it adapts nicely to different screen sizes. While working with the GIPHY API, you might run into a sneaky issue that doesn't show up clearly. You might hit the token limit. If that happens, don't worry. Just wait 24 hours or generate a new API key. Fun future idea. We could actually write a function that uses multiple API keys and automatically switches between them when the limit is reached. If you're up for the challenge, try building it and send a fork my way. Okay, the project is finished. Let's deploy it. I'm using Render because it's simple, free, and super convenient, but you do need to understand the basic process. First, connect your GitHub repo. Then create both a web service for the back end and a static site for the front end. Next, add all the environment variables from your env file, write the start commands, and update your project to use the new domain names. In every project, try to use separate variables for your domains. That way, switching between environments becomes way easier and faster. Also, watch out for a small but important detail slashes at the end of domain URLs. A missing or extra slash can result in weird bugs like server not found. Don't forget to update your Google OAuth settings with the new domain too. Once everything's up and running, we'll test it one last time, and then it's on to the next awesome project for the portfolio. This was a GIPHY-style clone, another project from the 10 Labs 10 Habs series. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, fork the repo, and feel free to suggest your own improvements. Also, drop a comment with any project ideas you'd love to see in future videos. All source code is linked in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next project. Coming soon, a real drum simulator built with JavaScript. By the way, that idea came straight from the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.